This podcast is brought to you by Proton Dealership IT, experts in dealership cybersecurity and IT management. Interested in a free cybersecurity, compliance, or IT consultation? Visit protontex.com. That's PROTONTECHS.com.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Wednesday, November 19th, 2025. I'm Jake Neer in Detroit, in for Kellen Walker, who's on assignment. Today on the show, the Netherlands relinquishes control of Nexperia. Nissan considers a Rogue spinoff for Infiniti, and Stellantis will offer access to Tesla's supercharger network. Plus, what happens when connected cars drive into cellular dead zones? Stefano Marzani of Amazon Web Services joins the show to talk about how to best serve customers in areas like the American West.
The cabin of a vehicle is not something else that disrupts your digital lifestyle. You want to just continue your digital lifestyle there, have that integrated.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. There's a bit of relief, but still plenty of uncertainty around the Nexperia chip crisis. The Dutch government says it's suspending its takeover of the Chinese-owned chip maker after what it called constructive talks with Beijing. The move eases a dispute that had put global auto production at risk. Volkswagen says it has secured enough chips for now, but others aren't in the clear. Bosch says disruptions continue at 3 plants with thousands of workers on furlough or reduced hours. ZF says its task force has secured supply through at least next week, though it says it still can't rule out furloughs later this month. Automakers, including BMW, warn the situation is still volatile, even with the political thaw. Nissan CEO Ivan Espinosa says the company's lineup overhaul could include a new Infiniti model spun off from the Rogue and built in Tennessee. He says next year's launch of the hybrid Rogue, a full year of Sentra sales, and added U.S. capacity for larger SUVs should help stabilize growth, even as tariffs pressure Mexican-built nameplates.
We want to continue healthy growth to the extent possible. We don't want to keep growing volume for volume's sake. I think in the end it's a balance. And this is what we have done already this year, trying to balance more healthy business, even if our absolute sales look like reducing. The business itself is better.
You can hear our full interview with Nissan CEO Ivan Espinosa, including his plans for a full hybrid lineup, on Thursday's episode of Daily Drive. And Stellantis is adopting the North American charging standard, unlocking access to over 28,000 Tesla superchargers across North America, Japan, and South Korea. Starting in 2026, EVs like the Jeep Wagoneer S and Dodge Charger Daytona will tap into Tesla's network, with the Jeep Recon and future models following suit. And those are today's headlines. You can find more details on all of those stories at autonews.com. In a minute, we're going to hear from Amazon Web Services' Stefano Marzani about a big issue with connected vehicles. They need cell service. A brief personal story. I was out west with my family over the summer in the backcountry of states like Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico. And if you found yourself out that way, you know that the service is spotty if you're lucky. Kind of nice for escaping the hustle and bustle when you're on vacation like me, but not great if your car is designed to rely on 4G, 5G, or even better. Our own Molly Boygan has been reporting on this issue for us at Automotive News, and she joins me now to talk about it. Molly, welcome back to Daily Drive.
Thanks, Jake.
So give us the overall picture here. How big a problem is this for connected vehicles, and what are the possible solutions?
So it's a sort of nuanced problem because most of the U.S. has access to at least 4G cellular service and in some cases 5G cellular service. However, there are significant parts of the country, especially out west in the great state of Alaska, which I know you've spent some time in, Jake.
That's right.
Where there's really, it's dead zones. I mean, there's really not adequate cell service. And as vehicles become more connected, you can't rely on a Wi-Fi connection unless you're close to home. You know, something like a Bluetooth connection is really not going to help you do access cloud servers or back-end servers from the automaker. So you need the cellular network. And increasingly, different connected vehicle services are relying on that network. So you have things like remote unlock for your vehicle. You have things like different infotainment services, even the sort of feedback loop for some autonomous and ADAS functions relies on the network. So it's really an interesting problem, and one that has like kind of a counterintuitively simple cause, which is that the West is so beautiful, the landscape is so varied, and these huge mountains and dramatic canyons and dense forests are the source of much consternation for the network providers because they block cell service. And that's kind of the functional issue at play.
Is there something that the automakers and others that are working on connected vehicles are thinking about to try to address this? I mean, is there much that can be done, honestly?
So there's a few things that the automakers are looking at. One is kind of a like pragmatic solution, notifying the driver when they're planning a trip that's going to encounter a dead zone so that they can download map data and infotainment data and stuff like that ahead of time. On the more kind of space age end of things, there are antennas that the automakers currently use to access the network. If the antennas are bigger, they could potentially get signal in parts of the country that don't have as good access. And then lastly, the thing that I really had no idea about before reporting this story is that the industry is looking at reliance on low orbital satellites for parts of the country where there's really no service and where even like an antenna improvement would not be enhancing access. So in that case, vehicles would access the network via those low orbital satellites. However, they're really expensive and there are some sort of regulatory limits to that, but there is a sort of suite of solutions that the industry is looking at to mitigate this problem.
Interesting. Well, we're about to hear your interview with Stefano Marzani of AWS. Set this up a bit, Molly. What role does AWS play in all of this, and what were your big takeaways?
So AWS is one of the main companies that provides software infrastructure that enables connected vehicles. So, they have different products that enable things like OTA updates and predictive maintenance. And so Stefano is one of these people that's really intimately dealing with how the companies can enable connected vehicle features. And, this is one thing that they're looking at. And I'll also add, it's an interesting sort of like hyper regional problem because the US does have these wide open spaces, home on the range, et cetera. And it's a really like interesting regional problem for the US to tackle in particular.
All right. Well, very interesting stuff. We're about to hear that interview in just a minute. Molly, thanks for joining me on Daily Drive.
Thanks, Jake.
The centennial of automotive news comes once, and with it, a book worthy of the milestone. Produced in a premium hardcover format, this limited edition volume is designed to be a lasting presence in the offices, boardrooms, and Zoom backgrounds of leaders across the country. It's a celebration of the innovation, influence, and endurance that defined automotive news' first 100 years and a marker for the road ahead. Alongside historic moments, it offers fresh reflections from today's leaders on the forces reshaping the business, including an essay from Kathleen Ligocki, the highest-ranking female executive in the global auto industry during the late 1990s and early 2000s, about the rise of Mary Barra at GM.
When I look at someone like Mary continuing to have impact at her level, it inspires me to continue to have impact at mine.
The book will ship in late December. Copies are limited. You can pre-order now until Friday, November 21st at autonews.com.
While you provide top-notch support to your team and customers every day, is anyone taking the time to ensure your sensitive data remains secure? Just one click on a malicious link can place your entire dealership in danger. In fact, the average cost of a data breach surpassed $4 million last year. Stay one step ahead by understanding the threats and minimizing your risk. Proton Dealership IT works around the clock to provide you support 24/7, 365. Operating out of a cutting-edge security operations center located in the USA, Proton continuously monitors, detects, and responds to your potential network issues or cyber threats. You've got a lot on your plate. Keep your focus on where it matters most, your customers. Learn more about our comprehensive services at protontex.com. That's PROTONTECHS.com.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Jake Neer. As you heard before the break, our own Molly Boygan is looking into the issues surrounding connected vehicles and their reliance on cellular service to function as designed. Stefano Marzani is engineering technology and strategy leader at Amazon Web Services, or AWS. He tells Molly that the auto industry is working on several solutions to provide connected car services in the country's dead zones. First, he says, companies must ensure that safety-critical functions remain on board the vehicle. Here's a piece of their conversation.
So I think let's begin by explaining what connected vehicle features rely on the cellular network at this point.
Yeah, there's plenty of them, right? So think about everyday's consumer experience in a vehicle, right? As a passenger or a driver, from really basic one, like making a call, to somebody while you're driving, to real, what we intend as connected features, like, for example, sending information in order to receive assistance or support or diagnostic, troubleshooting, all this kind of roadside assistance as well, right? So this kind of traditional functionalities. Surely, if you enter a modern vehicle nowadays, you see way more than that, right? So infotainment is becoming really connected experience. You can watch movies under the proper conditions and safety conditions, obviously. You can listen to podcasts. You want to connect your digital experience, your digital life to that kind of environment. So the cabin of a vehicle is not something else that disrupts your digital lifestyle. You want to just continue your digital lifestyle there, have that integrated. And that can deal with, of course, vocal assistant systems, agents, artificial intelligence that our customers are asking really a lot in terms of how we can integrate that in vehicles, how we can have a vehicle assistant that talks about the functionalities that are available. In some cases, even to control the vehicle functions through a voice assistant. So there's plenty of it. There's plenty, a lot as well, very recent times, not just with a simple stream of data as it was in the past, but rich media as well. So, for example, video streams or collecting sensor data, rich sensor data, and transfer that to servers. And that can be done for real-time functionalities. Think about the kind of the sentry mode. You want to see what's going on in your vehicle while you are away through your phone. Or other cases like collecting data to improve autonomous driving functionalities. Those are some of the use cases that require a connected. So provide experience, provide service, and improve the product itself.
And when you talk about ADAS and autonomy, that's interesting to me because I think someone who's not familiar would say, oh, well, the local sensors and cameras are collecting data on board the vehicle and filtering it through, I guess map data would be relying on the cellular network, real-time map data. So is that really where the crux of the cellular network relies on for ADAS and autonomy, or is it something else?
For ADAS and autonomy, we need to have the information local to the vehicle. So especially when you are driving, you can't rely on decision taken elsewhere in order to perform a maneuver that is in real time. Everything needs to stay in the vehicle for that specific usage. So if you are relying on HD maps, the maps needs to be readily available. So they needed to be downloaded before, right? You are taking a maneuver, and the sensor and all the data is executed real time. Real time is a super important concept in automotive. Everything is real time, needs to be processed locally, especially if the requirements of throughput and latency are strict because they are exercising a sensitive functionality.
And for these parts of the country that don't have good access to cellular networks, what solutions are available? I know that, for something like OTA, automakers advise and configure the vehicle so that it's relying on the cellular network. Obviously, something like a Bluetooth connection is entirely local. What other solutions are available to ensure not only the sort of fun features, like you said, streaming, gaming, which while not necessary are still like a sort of value add that the consumer is planning to access, but also some of those safety related functions that are really a core offering of some of the software defined and connected vehicles.
There's a lot that deals with how these functionalities are engineered. right? So I don't think it's just a matter of, let's say, have a functionality deployed and that's it. There's this very simple rule. Everything that is critical needs to be executed in the car and doesn't need to rely on quality of service, as we call it, of the cellular connectivity. Having said that, I give you a specific example we worked on. Let's assume you want to ask your car, hey, I see a light in my instrument cluster. What's going on? In automotive, we classify that as a technically enabling functionality, meaning it's kind of critical because the car can respond to you, hey, oh, it's nothing, just move ahead. And then after a mile, the car breaks or, I don't know, catches fire because it was a very, very serious issue, right? Why is that? Because LLM can be, and SLMs, all these, let's say, agentic technologies, they are subject to hallucinations. They are subject to other kind of things. So, and you can say, yeah, we can give this functionality to every driver, and it's just relies on cloud. We have a lot of models up there. That's not the case, right? So, or we can create a small language model. We can deploy it, run it locally, and not depend on the cloud. It's not really tackling the issue that I'm talking about, right? So I think it's really, you need to understand the use case very well and put together the workflows that are necessary to manage the use case in a very, very holistic fashion. So the engineering processes that in automotive are absolutely well established, right? So the famous V model of the engineering, functional safety practices, needs to be adopted in considering the quality of service and considering the usage of technologies that deal with artificial intelligence. So, and going back to your question specifically, for this area, I think that's the approach, right? So what can we understand better the user? What's their mission? Why are they taking a vehicle? Can we prepare the car with some of that content in advance in order for them to safely or having fun in enjoying that kind of workload while they are doing this drive? That's something that is made possible by, again, better connecting your digital lifestyle to the car environment, because we have all the technical ways and technological ways to do that. So I don't see just that as a isolated kind of experience. That needs to be prepared, especially if a user is aware that the cellular connectivity may be poor during that specific route they are going through. So that's maybe think about an assistant that was going to tell you, hey, I know that tomorrow you got to go there. And there may be some blind spot areas for cellular connectivity. So why don't we prepare some of the content you may enjoy for that trip, right? So that can be a possible answer to some of these things, because we want to have a better connected experience for the vehicle, for the users themselves.
Mm-hmm. So if I hear you correctly, the auto industry can, using some of the sort of personalization and AI-enabled information in the vehicle, first of all, prepare the user for the possibility that they may encounter a dead zone while driving. And second of all, knowing the user enables companies to ensure that the sort of like mission critical functions remain on board the vehicles. And I know you were talking about, in the case of a voice assistant, having sort of function related or like sort of almost manual, like I'm thinking of a driver's manual related functions stored in a small language model on board the vehicle, rather than pulling to the cloud for, even natural speech involving those types of commands. Correct. Okay. Thank you.
Exactly right. I think these two elements needs to go together. So it's what we call the mixed critical orchestration and management. So clearly classifying relevant use cases from the functional safety perspective, the criticality, and separate their design and their deployment and their monitoring, super important, rather than, okay, I'm just giving you the latest podcast because I know that there's a blind spot in your route. Totally different things from the workflow orchestration management. So what I'm saying is, it's not just a technical measure. It's a workflow and methodological measure that needs to be in place.
Mm-hmm. And are you familiar at all with this I was reading on the 5GAA's website about non-terrestrial networks. So the effort to basically overcome some of the hardware limitations of a cellular tower by deploying like a cellular network calls to a satellite. How common is this now, and how sort of big of a part of the conversation is this becoming?
But surely, satellite connectivity is a super interesting technology to address this issue, especially for rural areas or forests. You may have, an adventure going in a forest somewhere, and surely that's maybe not covered by. So cellular and kind of satellite connectivity, it's extremely promising for all of it. Caveat to what I said before. It's not just the media. It's the way we design and deliver a specific experience that is extremely relevant, and that can take into account and should take into account all available channels that are available to improve the quality of service. But at the end, it's always a quality of service measurement. I have a technology model that I can use to transfer data with a specific quality of service. Yeah, let's add it, but the workflow needs to be consistent for across all the channels that are available. Surely it can improve. Surely if we have satellite connectivity, yeah, fantastic. So we really hope to see that more and more.
And what is the practical limitation of deploying that more? Because I would think, from a person who's not in the space as much as you, it's like, oh, this is a no-brainer. Let's the satellites are already up there. Let's just access them to access the cellular network. So what is the sort of obstacle?
So I'm not a specialist in satellites. We surely have specialists in our Kuiper Leo division. So, and I can definitely refer you to them and have their expertise on this specific topic. What I can tell you is, anyway, there's a time to get there. What do we do in the meanwhile? And, on another side, we have awesome cellular connectivity in a lot of places. So, and again, I think knowing the user better in any case is an added value for every auto manufacturer or anybody who needs to provide an automotive service. So why don't we invest really to support the user with what we have to start with? And then when something else comes available, we can definitely use that to facilitate, amplify, accelerate. But there are opportunities nowadays that the OEM car manufacturers should look at because they are technically possible.
Like some of those sort of workflow and user needs understanding approaches.
Yes.
You can hear the rest of AWS's Stefano Marzani's interview with our own Molly Boygan on the next bonus episode of Daily Drive. That'll be available Sunday morning. That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Jake Neer, in for Kellen Walker. Thanks to automotive news journalists Hans Greimel and Vince Bond Jr. for their reporting for today's podcast. You can get the latest news on tech and innovation, supply chains, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back tomorrow for our exclusive interview with Nissan CEO Ivan Espinosa.
We are focusing a lot more on our healthy retail business, and we have almost 1 point of market share grown versus last year, which is a good trend.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.